does our subject still wear pink socks? That line makes sense if you've seen this movie. Hello, I'm doing a movie review, and the movie I want to review is the 1981 horror film Possession, which was co-written and directed by Andrzej Żuławski. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right or not. Now, this is the only film by this director I have seen, but I know this director was actually known for his politically subversive films, and apparently a lot of his films were actually banned in certain countries in Europe. And I would say that this is very much a political film. It's making a commentary on the state of Berlin in the 1980s, which obviously back then was present time, and it's also kind of making a commentary on the state of the world in general at this time. So it's a very political film, but it's a political film wrapped in a drama about the breakdown of a marriage, but it's also wrapped in a Lovecraftian horror story. Now, I want to personally thank my friend Bill Burns for introducing this movie to me. My friend Bill wrote a book on horror films called The Thrill of Repulsion, which I actually did a review on a while back, and in that book he had a chapter on art house horror films, and he wrote a little review of this movie in that chapter. So when I first read his book, and I saw that review of this movie, I was like, I have to see this freaking movie, and eventually I did manage to track the movie down, and I'm so glad that he introduced this movie to me. And I really don't know how I've never heard of this movie until a short while ago. Now, Possession is a French/German co-production, and the film takes place in Berlin, West Germany, during the height of the Cold War. Now, during this period, there was a lot of anxiety about the possibility of World War III breaking out. Now, keeping that in mind is very important in terms of how you interpret the ending of this film. Now, the plot of Possession is it's about this man named Mark, who is a spy who just came back from some kind of an espionage mission, and you're not really sure exactly what he did, but it's heavily implied that whatever he did was on the other side of the Berlin Wall, in East Berlin, or somewhere in the Eastern Bloc. But Mark returns from this mission to basically find that his family life has more or less fallen apart. Like, his wife Anna is very unhappy with him, and it's clear that she wants to leave him, but they have a son named Bob, and you really do get the idea that this son is really the only thing that's keeping these two together. Like, if it wasn't for this kid, they probably both would have gone their separate ways, but it turns out that Anna was also having an affair with this guy named Heinrich. And essentially the film is about the complete and total collapse of Mark and Anna's marriage, but it also seems that both these people are going completely insane. It seems that Anna is going a little more crazy than Mark, but Mark is also not all there either. And it seems like this unhappy marriage has essentially driven both these people over the edge of sanity, but you also get the idea that maybe it's society's expectations of both men and women that has kind of driven both these people insane. Now, the film starts out kind of normal. Like, it's clear that this is an unhappy marriage, but the film soon deteriorates or evolves, depending on how you look at it, into this dreamlike odyssey into the shared personal hell of both these people. And this personal hell includes murder, doppelgangers, and a tentacled monster. Now, so much of this movie is left open to the viewer's interpretation, and you can interpret this film on so many different levels. Like, all the supernatural stuff in this movie, you're not sure how much of it is real, and how much of it is only in Anna's head, or maybe only in Mark's head, or are they both having some shared hallucination or something? Like, you can interpret this film in so many different ways. Like, the supernatural stuff in this movie movie, it seems like it's actually supernatural because more people besides Anna and Mark witness the supernatural events in this movie, but once again, you can interpret that on so many different levels, though. Now, I saw one review of this movie that actually interpreted the entire thing as being from Mark's perspective. Now, if you view this film as being completely from Mark's point of view, now in the film it appears that Anna has gone completely batshit insane, but once again, if you assume that it's all from Mark's point of view, maybe that's how he sees his wife, but maybe that's not actually the reality. Maybe that's only how he reflects on his wife, and maybe that's how he's seeing his wife, but maybe Anna really isn't going as insane as Mark seems to think she is. Now, I'm not really sure if I agree with that interpretation. I personally interpret the film as being from both Mark and Anna's perspective, and I feel like both these characters are going equally insane, although perhaps maybe they're both going insane in different ways, but I believe they're both going equally crazy. But I do feel like part of the reason why Anna's going crazy could be partly because of Mark's misogyny, which he does fully admit his misogyny at one point in this movie, and it's implied that there could have been some abuse in the relationship even before Mark left to go on this espionage mission. So possibly the way Mark has treated her could have in some way driven her insane, and at the same time the way she's treated Mark is driving Mark insane. Like, both these characters are just driving each other over the edge. And as I said before, I feel like the reason they're both going crazy could also be because of the expectations that society puts on both men and women. Now, as I said before, this is actually a very political film. Like, throughout the film, you constantly see the Berlin Wall in the background, and so much of this film is really about the Cold War and the divide between East and West Berlin, and you could look at the divide between Mark and Anna in this film as being symbolic of the divide between East and West Berlin and the divide between the two superpowers that was going on during this time period. And in a lot of ways, the breakdown of Mark and Anna's marriage is very much a metaphor for this breakdown of society that you see happen within the film. Now, I do want to point out the character of Heinrich, who is definitely one of the most memorable characters from this movie. Now, Heinrich was this guy that Anna was having an affair with, and this guy is so freaking outlandish and so freaking over the top, and he's really kind of funny. Like, there is some humor in this film, despite how nihilistic the film actually is. There is actually quite a bit of humor, but a lot of the humor really does come from this guy Heinrich, who is almost completely out of this world. Now, if you interpret the film as all being from Mark's point of view, you could interpret it as maybe that's how Mark sees this guy, but maybe it's not actually how this guy really is. But still, the way the actor plays Heinrich in this film is just, once again, he's just batshit insane. Not as insane as you see Mark and Anna go in the film, but he's definitely very outlandish and almost out of this world in some ways. Now, in the film, Sam Neill plays Mark, and I love Sam Neill. I think he is a criminally underrated actor, and he does such a great job in this movie as the character of Mark. And Mark is a sympathetic character, but he's also a deeply flawed character as well. And you sympathize with him, but at the same time, though, you kinda understand why this marriage kind of broke apart the way it did, because Mark does admit at one point in the movie that he is kind of a misogynist, and also you realize that he really wants to possess Anna. Like, he treats her almost like a possession, and that could be partially the reason why this marriage broke apart the way it did. And in the film, Isabelle Adjani plays the character of Anna. And dear God, if you have to see this movie for one reason, see it for Adjani's performance in this movie, because her performance is honestly almost hypnotic in a way. Like, she does an amazing job in this movie, and what's really interesting about her performance in this film is not only does she play the character of Anna, which that alone had to be a challenging role, but she also plays a whole nother character in this movie who acts completely different from Anna, so she plays these two different characters in the movie who are so radically different from each other, and she does it seamlessly. Like, when she plays this other character in the movie, for a second I actually thought that was another actress, but it's her playing this dual role, and she does such an amazing job in the film. And rumor has it she actually had a nervous breakdown after her performance in this film, and I heard, now I don't know this for sure, but I heard that this actress actually attempted suicide after playing this character in this film. Now, I can't recommend Possession enough. Now, it's not a movie for everybody, like, it is an art house movie, and I recognize that that's not everybody's cup of tea, but if this movie sounds like it's up your alley, definitely check this movie out. Now, unfortunately, this movie is really hard to come by, at least in the United States. Now, the DVD, to the best of my knowledge, is out of print, and apparently it goes for a lot of money, like in the $40 range, I think. Now, I have a DVD, but it's actually not mine. I actually rented this DVD, believe it or not. Believe it or not, there's actually a video store here on Long Island where you can still rent DVDs and even VHS tapes, and that's where I rented this movie. But I do eventually want to actually own my own copy of this movie at some point, because this was an incredible movie. Now, this movie has been uploaded to YouTube. However, the version that's been uploaded to YouTube is in really bad video quality, and also the picture's been kind of zoomed in where you don't get the whole frame and stuff like that. Also, I'm not sure if the version on YouTube right now is the full version of this movie or not. Now, I've never seen the American cut of this movie, but I've heard that the American cut of this film is actually pretty bad, because apparently they cut like 45 minutes out of this film when they released it here in the States. So I recommend trying to track down the European cut of this film. But yeah, that was my review on Possession, and bye.